Philadelphia 76ers continue to amaze you on this roller coaster of emotions. So the 76ers and James Harden have agreed to an opt-in trade. To put it simply, I thought opting in would have been a possibility if James would have wanted a small deal to prove himself and then to get a long contract, but I don't think he was going to be in for that. He wanted that big bag, and reports fly everywhere, and given that it's Dale, his boy, first off, kind of a bit of a shout out to Dale Morey. It's 50-50. I'm meaning Sixer Twitter, and another Twitter guy put up a great point I'm going to get to very shortly. But first, shout out to Dale Morey, and more likely Joshua Harris. You saw what happened in Game 6. You saw what happened in Game 7. You saw this is the guy that, Tim Lager, go watch what Tim Lager said. 1-for-1, 100, the reality of the situation. You can't have a guy averaging 5 turnovers and 4 field goals. You just can't. I'm sorry. No matter how great you may have been in the past, you're not that guy in the present. And probably more Joshua Harris than Dale Morey, for being honest. Although when the trade happens, I'm sure Dale will be able to explain himself, be able to explain what occurred. But whatever happened in that front office, someone had the cajones to say, we're not going to do this. After Tyrese Harris is finally expiring, with the Tyrese Maxey extension and everything opening up, this franchise could not do this. If you're going to put salary in here, the salary, I read the new CBA and I understand it. With the way this new CBA is, you better have players locked up on good value for the next 4 or 5 years. You can't have the big free era super big contracts. In the ideal world going forward, Joel Embiid's the only big contract. Seriously. That's how bad this new CBA is. And it plays a direct factor in everything that's going down. So, and part of it is that, the new CBA. The other part of it is Harden's performance and what Harden's performance projects out to be in the future. So, shout out to Darryl to a degree, although more likely Joshua Harris, which means I'm going to have to praise Joshua Harris on this. Thank God for defending the $6, because obviously the fans pay money. They pay money, they pay for the seats, and they do all these things with the expectation that the Sixers will be competitive. Now, it doesn't mean that they'll win, but it does mean that they're competitive, that there's a path forward. And I'm going to be blunt. Despite us trying to tell ourselves otherwise, now we don't have to. There was no competitive path forward with James Harden. After Game 6, after Game 7, after what happened, there was not a competitive path forward. And Joshua Harris, the ownership, they saw that. So now it's the opt-in and the trade. And I expect the trade to be completed in a very short period of time. Like, in the next few days, maybe even the next few hours. So, we've heard the Clippers and we heard the Knicks. So, the Knicks are a real mystery. The Knicks, they could offer you some good first-round pick value. And I actually imagine that if you do go that route, you will want to route it to a third team for a star. So it could be that the Knicks and the Clippers could be involved in this, where the Clippers get pick compensation for Paul George, and Paul George comes over to Philadelphia. That's something that I could see. Watch out for that if the Knicks are substantially involved. I don't see the Knicks giving up Brunson or Harden. Stranger things have happened, but I just don't see that. I see them looking at a Harden-Brunson backcourt if they were to get him. But I don't see them moving Brunson for Harden. Which is why, kind of, when it comes to the Clippers, there's only one guy you want, and it's Terrence Mann. Norman Powell's pretty good, too. And I would like to have both Terrence Mann and Norman Powell. Clipper fans were suggesting it when the Clippers first became the dark horse, quickly developed now the Clippers are the odds-on favorite. Terrence Mann, he's a young 24-year-old guard. Another one of those players that Doc couldn't discover for the life of him because you don't have a beard yet. You know, you don't have your girlfriend, or even if you did, you barely drank maybe 16 ounces of wine, so Doc didn't give a shit. You couldn't go out with him when he was golfing. So Doc didn't care for Terrence Mann. Ty Lue had played Terrence Mann, and Terrence Mann had been a six man, but Terrence Mann wants more minutes, wants more opportunity, and the Clippers weren't there. Not as bad as Doc, but a very similar compete now with the Kawhi and Paul George situation. So Terrence Mann, he's next, and I would be interested in a Tyrese Maxey, Terrence Mann backcourt. I'd be really interested to see how that looks. Because, honestly, Terrence Mann, he provides a lot of good things. He provides three-point shooting. He provides defense. He provides size. He provides a lot of things at the shooting guard position. So if you have Maxey, you develop him as a point guard, and you have Terrence Mann as a backcourt partner, that could be a really, really good backcourt. It could be a really, really good backcourt. Now, some have said, could we get Paul George and Terrence Mann? Now, if you get that, something like that done, which I think might be possible if you bring in the Knicks. But that will involve, and that's a complicating thing. The only way the Knicks trade those picks is if Harden goes to New York. And if not Harden, the only way the Knicks trade PG or a man is if they get a guy like that. So that's going to be part of the conflicting thing with a three-team here is that both teams will want the same guy, James Harden, or a comparable value. And I just don't see that. I just don't see that. Another thing that's possible, however, is that you could combine Harden with Tobias, and it's basically $80 million in salary cap savings right there. And that might be something that interests the Clippers, and you forget about the Knicks. One thing is for certain, though. We know what Daryl Morey is like. Now that the situation had come to this, Daryl Morey is going to get himself either those premier young players, or he's going to get himself a Paul George, or he might just shock me and get both. But this situation is going to be resolved very quickly. It's going to be resolved in the next 72 hours. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, even 6 hours later, I come and make a video talking about trade finalizations. So this is a very rapidly developing situation that we're dealing with here. I gotta say, you know, and shout out to one of my friends, one of my colleagues here on YouTube, DJ Eastwood, running back Philly. He called it. I do think that there's an underlying current here of Nick Nurse does not want ball dominant, pound the ground until there's 5 seconds on the shot clock, James Harden. I don't think Nick Nurse is about that life. And even though they talked about ways that could have been involved, etc., I don't think it ever would have been, you know, where James is just too stuck in his ways. Nick is not really an ideologue, but you don't have to be an ideologue to have principles and things you want to do. So I just don't think that would have worked. So for a bunch of reasons, the most important being what happened in Game 6 and in Game 7, things weren't going to be the same. It couldn't be. Now, for those on the Embiid prime and things like that. Okay, so before we traded for James Harden to begin with, we were a top 3 seed. We were winning 630% of our games. That was legitimate. So this idea that the Sixers will drop from being a top 3 seed in the NBA Eastern Conference. I don't think that that's really true. I don't think that that holds a lot of relevance. I think that this team is going to continue to win regular season games. I think this team is going to continue to be a threat in the Eastern Conference. Now, here's the best part. We can't say we know what will happen with this team in the playoffs. We can't. Especially depending on how much we get back. Terrence Mann, another shooter. Can we finally get a small forward? Or now we need, well, Tyrese Maxey will probably be the starting point guard, so you still need a backup point guard. But I'm interested. I am finally fucking interested. I am legitimately hopeful. I did not believe in this team if it ran it zero. I had zero belief in this franchise if it had ran it back. I can speak for every Sixer fan. I had zero belief in this team as it was constructed prior to 35 minutes ago at the time of recording. I have zero belief that this team had any chance in hell of making it past the second round. You couldn't do it with the Hawks. You couldn't do it in Game 6 even though you're up 2 points. Couldn't do it then. I had no belief you would ever be able to do it. And I think that's also a little bit of part of ownership. If you couldn't do it multiple times, no matter how much of a front they may give, even they had to admit that it just wasn't going to be. So, I think I'll end it there. Situation is unfolding. Situation is rapid. There will be massive developments and videos coming out as well, from me and from others, obviously. This is major breaking news. The most important takeaway is that the Sixers are relevant again. I'm serious. They were not relevant if they brought it back. They were not relevant. Oh, sure, Woj and ESPN would talk about them and be like, oh, what can Harden do for the infinite time? But in reality, you were not relevant if you brought this back. Now you're relevant because now we're going to see new faces. We're going to see new players. We're going to have a new system and a new opportunity. Now we can really wipe the slate clean. Now, and maybe you could trade Court Martin. Well, now we can really wipe the slate clean of the process, the 10 years of suffering that have gotten us nowhere. With the James Harden trade, it will cleanse the Philadelphia 76ers. And that is something that I long wanted over the past few years. It's time. It's just time. Six of the Universe signing off for now. Things are going to develop really quickly.